Please welcome back the director, Francesca Triani, along with editor Lula Corey and supervising editor Mark Becker. So, Francesca, you described in the introduction that this began as a cover story in Time magazine. Can you describe, what you were doing as part of that reporting team, and then how it evolved from a story in a magazine to becoming a film?
Yes, thank you so much again for coming. I was sent to Greece with the photographer Lindsay Dario, who's one of the best photographers working today, and Erin Baker, who's just an amazing writer. And we spent weeks and weeks looking for women that would want to take part of this project on this film. I think we talked to every single pregnant woman in Greece at the time. And we were very honest. We wanted to film them and photograph them and write about them for a year. Most families said no. We always had to ask the husband first because men decide for the family, and if the husbands agreed, we would make sure that the women also wanted to participate. And what we really wanted to do was to be there when the women gave birth, to really show this new beginning in their lives and follow them. And we got really lucky to meet Taimaa and Nour. At the time, we were following 6 other families. And Taimaa, especially, I met her 30 minutes before she went into labor. That was the first time that I filmed a woman give birth. It was really emotional, and we bonded really quickly, and I think that really helped with the intimacy and, in general, with the access that we got later on.
And as you went along in that year, and they go through these struggles and dramas, were they totally on board to have you following them? Did that relationship ever change?
Yes, definitely. I mean, a lot of times they just wanted us to leave because I think it was a really challenging and frustrating time in their lives. Often they just couldn't understand why, as Time magazine, we couldn't just change the situation. And the asylum process is very opaque. Even for us as journalists, it's really hard to understand how families get sent to a country versus another, or why their application takes 6 months or 9. And so we often didn't really have the answers they wanted from us. And so understandably, often they asked us to leave. And I think what I learned from Lindsay Dario, who has a lot of experience following stories for long periods of time, is that I think the best thing you can do as a journalist is to learn when you put down the camera and just leave people alone, so they know that there's an end to the process, and then next time you come back, you're more welcome.
Lula, as the editor, can you talk about what it was about this material that drew you to the project?
Well, first of all, I'm from Lebanon, so I felt close to the story from the beginning because Syria is our neighbor, right next door. And, I always thought I wanted to help in any way I can with the situation in the Middle East, but I am an editor. I'm not, in human rights or anything like that, so I help any way I can, so this is my way of doing it. One thing that I felt like I could bring to the project is that I understood the culture, so in the Middle East we tend to cope with what's happening with humor, which there's a lot of in the film. So I hope this got through, and the fact that we didn't really want to make a film about refugees, but more about these women and these families who are stuck in a situation that they didn't ask for.
Let's take some questions from the audience. Raise your hand, and I will call on you. Yeah, right there in the white.
I want to know if there are any refugees
So the question was about Estonia. What was your own experience in Estonia?
That's a really good question. Just to be fair to Estonia, they're a very small country. They only took in 200 refugees. Of those 200, about 50 left. So Taimaa and Mohammed are not the only ones. Versus Germany has taken in, I think about 800,000 refugees, and they have a long-standing tradition of welcoming people from different cultures. I have to say that I have met refugees that had a good experience in Estonia, and I think the main difference was that they were resettled to big cities. So the refugees, they were able to live in the capital, Tallinn, or in Tartu, which is the second largest city, were actually able to, get jobs and connect with people, and I think that had a huge impact to their overall happiness. I think what really drew us also to this story and to these characters is that they we're facing the same exact challenge, like a very inflexible system, but one family somehow always had a positive attitude and tried to take it as an opportunity, and the other family really struggled every step of the way. And so, as a human being, it was interesting to see how much the way they face adversity really had an impact on their everyday experience.
Friends, in the middle.
I was wondering if they had a chance to see the film and what their reaction was if they've seen it.
Yeah.
So the question was, have the subjects seen the film and how did they react?
Yes, I really was nervous when I showed it to them. I think they didn't really know what to expect, in the sense that it was such a long process, and I think they were really eager to see how their experience was being portrayed. Nour and Youssef were really excited to see the final project. I think they believed in the power of journalism and really wanted people in Europe to understand what they went through. And the first thing they said was, I wish you met us in Syria, so you could have seen our home and you can have followed us fleeing and you could have really seen what we lost. And for Taimaa and Mohammed, the overall process of being filmed was, I think, a more challenging experience. I remember the first time that we showed Taimaa a photograph that was published on Time magazine. She looked at us and said, okay, I look like a refugee. I look poor. So I think they, throughout the process, had a harder time seeing their own story reflected back to them.
Some hands up in the back. I'll take the one on.
I was just wondering, first of all, amazing editing, amazing. I'm just wondering, the second couple that you mentioned, Taimaa and Mohammed, are they still together?
And so the question was, Taimaa and Mohammed, the couple that we see with some friction, are they still together?
Yes, actually, they're still together. And here, I'm going to do a plug for my boss, Justine Simons and Jonathan Woods, and Kira Pollack, who said the first yes and let us go back so many times. I would love to go back again to see how their relationship is now. Anyway, they are actually doing much better. I think they understood that they only have each other. And they've been telling us that they're trying to work it out and make a home that is happy for their kids. I think the experience of Estonia actually eventually really drew them closer together. So, I'm excited to go back one day and see what it looks like.
There's another hand in the very back.
When Taimaa and Mohammed tried to go to Germany, did Mohammed's brother go with them as well?
So the question was, when Taimaa and Mohammed tried to go to Germany, did his brother go with him as well?
That's a complicated question. I mean, he did not go with them, and again, it's a little unclear why. Their asylum cases are separate. Each family has a separate asylum case. I think it's hard to tell why certain families get deported and others don't. It could be that the reason is that Mohammed's brother, who went with them to Germany, eventually ended up having a child in Germany. So I think maybe having had a kid in Germany helped his asylum to stay. But right now, Mohammed's brother is in Germany.
All right. See, hand up in the back there.
Yeah, I'm curious, we saw a bit of the reception process in Germany and in Estonia, and obviously there was a lot of reference to them having very different levels of experience in the sort of integration process. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you observed and how those differed?
Can you talk more about what you observed in the contrast of integration processes between Germany and Estonia?
Yeah. The main thing that Germany is doing, which I think is really interesting, is mandating people to study German for 2 years. In a way that is really good because it's supposed to help people be more independent. I find it sometimes problematic for women because those courses are harder to access if you're a woman with kids. And so, for example, Nour right now has not been able to start classes, only Yusuf goes, and I think that's another way of isolating women and not really letting them become independent. But it also really allows refugees to have this like period in between where they can get adjusted to Germany, and they meet also other refugees in classes, so they meet friends. Like, in the country, the Estonian system, I have to say, now has been changed, also because of our reporting, and all the refugees are being sent to bigger cities, which I think is helping. What Estonia does that is actually incredible is that provides all refugees as they arrive with a home, with an apartment immediately. Like, what country does that? And the kids are in school, so Weil and Helen are already in kindergarten. They are placed into schools really quickly. And overall, because it's a smaller country, I think refugees actually get better individualized attention. So it really depends, I guess, what's the right fit for you.
Right here in the front row.
I have a question. This has been a really big project. There were photographs and articles in the magazine. There was an Instagram account for a really long time. Did you always have the intention to create a feature documentary from the beginning of the project? And if so, what was that strategy like, trying to get material for so many different types of presentations?
So the question was it always the intention to make a feature-length documentary from the beginning, and how did the documentary fit amongst the other kind of reporting, photography, writing that Time was doing?
So my day job is being a journalist. So when I was sent, I was supposed to produce a short documentary for Time to publish on the web. And to be honest, I didn't really think it was going to be so much bigger. But we kept going back, and we kept getting like incredible access and a lot of intimacy. And so we started thinking what that might look like. And again, Time has been incredibly supporting, giving me the time and the resources to keep going back and trying to do something bigger with it. I think it was really complicated because when you follow these stories, you don't know how they're going to end up. So we started with 6 families, and then we only ended up focusing on 2 here. And we also were publishing in the magazine in real time and on Instagram, which is called Finding Home, if you're curious to go check it out. And I think we ended up having so much that we just really wanted to find and reach different audiences for each medium. I feel personally that having an Instagram account that published their story in real time helped with access, because the families were able to see how we were using their story. And I think on a daily basis, it kind of like their trust got reinforced. But it also created a lot of other problems because, there was a point where, let's say, all the other refugees were like, wow, these journalists come to your house every day, like, why are you not getting paid? Or like, what's so special about you? And it created jealousy in the camp, and so,
Okay, we can take 1 or 2 more questions right here.
Yes, sir. Did the subjects have any editorial control over the final version of the documentary?
So the question is, did the subjects have any editorial control over the final version?
No, we use the same ethical guidelines for this documentary that we usually use in the magazine reporting. And I have to say, I'm a journalist. I don't know if I'm a filmmaker yet. And I was really grateful to be working with Mark Becker, who actually is an incredible editor and filmmaker who really helped us craft the story. I think my instinct as a journalist is to be really matter of fact and to really follow a timeline, and I think he was really incredible in helping us craft this into more documentary.
Well, but Mark, let me ask you, what were the qualities in this film that drew you in?
I actually, when Lula and Francesca first showed me footage, it was of three storylines strung out independently of each other, not woven together. And I felt like some of the access made me feel like I was watching a fiction film with just subtle behavior going on in the frame and conflict and drama within a domestic setting. And it felt like this was a Syrian refugee story, but it seemed like it was refusing to be symbolic in some sort of, I don't know, in a way that would be wrong for giving people a fully human voice, and it just felt a fully human voice. There's idiosyncratic individuals in here that refuse symbolism. And I felt like the connection between the characters was going to be super strong. It just felt like an enormous opportunity for in a film, and that Francesca had gotten the kind of footage that would translate into an involving point of view story. And so it was kind of a no-brainer to be involved. And then after that, my job was the easiest of all of us. It's like a domestic drama here, and then these two spent a lot of time in a room together. And so I would come by and just take the temperature.
Is that also a domestic drama?
Take the temperature of the room, and
He would be the middle voice when we would argue about what to put in the film. It's like, let's ask Mark. He'll decide.
Right, and I try to respond to the film, not to anyone's preference, and always respond to the film in front of us. And it was really just a pleasure, and I felt like Francesca got the footage, and we just had to make the movie.
Well, for my last question, Francesca, so the film has been playing at some film festivals, and for people who want to keep following its progress, where would you tell us to look?
Yes, that's a great question. So if you want to follow what's happening with the families or just be involved and see where else it's going to be playing, you should go on Instagram. It's called @FindingHome, one word, @FindingHome. And make sure to follow their story there.
We have 5 more days of Doc NYC. I hope you get to see more films. I thank you very much for coming, but thanks especially to Francesca Triani, Lula Corey, and Mark Becker.